How are we tackling running backs in fantasy football 2026 draft strategy? A lot of analysts will tell you immediately that this is the year for robust RB. Double up on running backs in rounds 1 and 2. I don't necessarily disagree. We have a very clear group of strong RB1s, and taking advantage of that and not dipping into the dreaded dead zone does have its clear advantages, but it is a bit more nuanced than that because your strategy should change depending on the range of picks that you are drafting in the first round. Everybody cannot go robust RB in your league, so you do have to be flexible. But how flexible? That is the key. Let's dig into my running back draft strategy for 2026. We will cover strategy, rankings, key players to targets, and fades, of course. Traditionally, I have tended to favor a hero RB approach in drafting in general. That has been my personal favorite strategy for years, but last year, I started to tilt more towards the robust RB, and then this year I am once again favoring a more robust RB build with some flexibility that it doesn't have to be running back within the first 2 rounds. The flexibility is that your safest path is to lock in your RB2 before round 5. The cutoff specifically is DeAndre Swift in the safety range and Cam Skattebo in the out of safety range. That cutoff has been the biggest change in my rankings over the past month. Now, why do I specifically have that cutoff? If you followed me this offseason, you know that originally Cam Skattebo was inside the tier of last players to target for me. I talked ad nauseum about him being a 3-down back based on the success that he had in limited showing, admittedly, last year as a 3-down back. And if he were a 3-down back this season, Cam Skattebo does have legitimate top 5 upside. The Giants' offensive line should be a top 10 unit with the investments that they've made. They have been very vocal about leaning on the ground game. Skattebo was on track for week 1. He showed very well as a receiver and was successful in yards after the catch last season. I thought that we would realistically get a slow ramp up and then he would settle into a significant workload. But the Giants have given us way too many red flags from their preseason usage to the signing of Najee Harris. And by no means am I telling you that Najee Harris will be the RB1. But I am concerned that the goal here is to run a straight up committee, and all the signs are pointing to it that we've got this new regime offensively led by Matt Nagy with Greg Roman, of all people, by his side. So there is inherent risk with Skattebo. On the other side, the safety range, DeAndre Swift falls into the safe zone because while he is operating in a committee, it is a very clear 2-back only situation with DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monangai, and Swift has first preference. The Bears are a run-heavy offense. They were very effective at it, and unlike Jackson Dart, Caleb Williams runs, but he's not a goal line sniper necessarily. The offense isn't changing. We know exactly what this is. Swift has a very nice baseline of guaranteed work. I wouldn't rely on him as an RB1, but he is a very low-risk RB2. Now that we know the cutoff for the safety range, how should you build within those first 4 rounds? Depending on where you are drafting. Let's start off with the easy one, the first 2 picks. It's very simple. You're taking Jahmyr Gibbs or Bijan Robinson. Your preference there. I have tilted towards Jahmyr Gibbs being the one that is clearly in the better offense, so therefore the safer pick, but they're both excellent options. Now, if you are in a 3 wide receiver or multiple flex league, and your preference is to draft Ja'Marr Chase first, go right on ahead. I've seen it done. It's not a big deal if you do that. Your advice just kind of shifts in terms of how you would draft to being in the next section of this video because you are leading with wide receiver. Now, for those taking Gibbs and Bijan, you are taking the most locked in, guaranteed high upside picks. So you can afford to be a little bit riskier with your RB2. So you have good flexibility when it comes to what you do at the 2-3 turn. You can take your wide receiver 1 there for sure. I would advise that. Take your wide receiver 1 there. You can also pair it up with a high-end tight end. Most likely, Trey McBride is the one that would be there. You can double up at wide receiver. Then once it comes around to the 4th, you can hope that DeAndre Swift makes it there, and he quite frequently does. Or you can dip into the risky range with a Quinshon Judkins, Bucky Irving, David Montgomery, Tuten. We will talk more about this section and specifically who you should target later on in the video. It's not ideal, but because you have one of the clear, unquestioned top-end backs, you can be a little risky and it will not hurt your overall build. If you want to play it safe at the turn and just do wide receiver, running back, that is perfectly fine. Very simple for you guys that are picking at the front end of the draft. Before we dive into the more complicated sections of exactly how you should be drafting running backs in the early rounds for picks 3 through 12, this video is sponsored by Rotowire, and you can get 25% off through the link below in the video description using my code Tara. It gets you access to amazing tools, and it's a great way to support my channel as well. Signing up with Rotowire gets you access to their fantasy football draft kit, which includes the draft assistant, unlimited simulations, and the mock draft simulator, which we have gone through in multiple videos. It is very helpful. Custom rankings, player outlooks, ADP reports, premium content, and so much more. And it doesn't stop there. Don't think that just because we're closing in on the draft season doesn't mean that you still don't want this, because you get access to in-season tools that are very critical to actually winning your league, waiver wire content, trade analyzers, competitive insights, detailed analysis, and so much more. Now, during your draft, you can use the draft assistant as your best friend during the draft. As we talk through all the players that you should target and which ones that are high risk, you can create your own personalized rankings and draft plan and select the players that you want to target and the ones that you want to fade, so that when you use the draft assistant, it will actually tell you the likelihood of the players that you want to target being drafted, and it'll help you gauge whether or not you need to go ahead and pick them, if you need to reach, or if you can afford to wait around. That way you do not get stuck trying to figure out exactly what you will do when all your draft targets in a tier run out before you get the chance to draft them. So again, you can get 25% off through the link below in the video description using my code Tara. Now, if you are drafting from picks 3 and 4, it's also very simple. You're taking Ja'Marr Chase or Puka Nacua. Yes, I still recommend drafting Puka Nacua despite the suspension possibility. The only difference in strategy for you is that you are 100% taking a running back in rounds 2 or 3. Feel free to double up at running back there, and then you are going wide receiver in the 4th. You have flexibility, but again, because you have that high-end wide receiver, it's easier for you to just go ahead and push wide receiver to the 4th and invest in running back. Now, we're going to skip over for a moment picks 5 through 8 because they are the most difficult picks. And we're going to talk about picks 9 through 12 because that is the prime zone for doubling up at running back. That is the one where everyone is talking about go robust RB. In this pick range, you have your choice. It is literally a platter of running backs. You've got James Cook, Saquon Barkley, Chase Brown, Devon Achane, Kenneth Walker, Derrick Henry, Amari and Hampton, and Ashton Genty, and that is the current order of them in half PPR. Now, obviously, Genty took a stumble back because of the injury, but he is still in that safe place of RB1s. My personal ranking is Achane, Barkley, Cook, Brown, Genty, Hampton, Henry. I will not belabor a long explanation on why I have Achane the highest. I've got a Substack that breaks it all down. These running backs that I have listed, they're all trustworthy RB1s that are locks for volume. They should all go before the second round is over. You should be comfortable with all of them. If you pick from 9 through 12, you can grab 2 of these backs, whatever ones you like, pair it up however you want, and then in round 3, you've got a wide variety of choices, solid choices as your wide receiver 1. Grab another in round 4, and you are set to run with a RB, wide receiver start. You also have the ability to mix it up if you choose. You don't have to go robust RB. It is ideal and easy to do it there, but you don't have to. In a full PPR, 3 wide receiver league or with multiple flex, a Justin Jefferson round 1 pick followed up by an RB or vice versa is perfectly fine. I've talked previously about feeling comfortable with Drake London in the first. I'm not. I've seen enough of Tua just to say I'm no longer comfortable. But the key takeaway here is that you must take at least one running back with those first two picks for you. At the end here, it is non-negotiable. Now on to the dreaded picks 5 through 8. I hate it. You hate it. We all hate it. I'm going to be real with you though. Ideal locations are at the front or the back of the draft. It is what it is. I did a Fantasy Pros video where I did talk about my perfect draft, and I wanted to challenge myself in that video and help you guys out as well. I chose, instead of picking the easy ones in the front or the back, I chose to take a middle pick so that we could walk through what that would actually look like, because it is arguably the most difficult range that comes with the widest variety of choices that you can make. I will link the video in the description below, or if I forget, I will put it in the comments. In this range, you have the option of going with JT or CMC or Amon-Ra, St. Brown, or JSN in the first. Those are not bad options, guys. None of them are. And sometimes Puka will fall here as well because of the risk of suspension, and one of the drafters ahead of you just wants to take a running back and be done with it. They're scared of that. So Puka could fall into this territory either. But what people dislike about this range is that you often get pigeonholed into RB wide receiver or wide receiver RB start, because there is the risk of those second tier running backs being gone by the time it gets to your pick. It can get a running back run, and all of a sudden you're staring down walking out of the first couple of rounds without a running back, because there is this inherent risk. It gets scary, right? And if you go with a wide receiver in the first round and you get sniped on running back in the second, you panic, right? But I'm here to put your mind at ease, guys. It's not that bad. I promise it's really not. It's a bummer on the surface because you are taking the top end of the next group after the elite options of Gibbs, Bijan, Puka, and Chase. But honestly, JT offers extremely high upside. It's just tied to the risk of Daniel Jones getting injured and things going sideways, right? Because we saw that last year. CMC does offer the highest upside of anyone. It's just that he has the risk of being tied to age. So these options can get you there. If everything goes well for them and perfectly, they have the same upside as Gibbs and Bijan. It's just that they have more risk. That's it. That's it. Just a little bit more risk. So you take the approach like this. You either decide that, hey, I want to take the risk at running back because I believe in one of these guys. My preference between the two is JT. You know that. Or you play it safe and go with the wide receiver volume hogs of JSN or Amon-Ra. If you do grab a running back, again, JT is my preference. That is the preference that I would go. I would recommend going wide receiver in the second round and third round, and then getting a running back in the fourth, because you will be able to take advantage of at least knowing that because of where you're picking, you probably are guaranteed to get one of the tail end of the safe running backs like ETN or Swift, right? So you're pretty much set from a top 4 picks perspective. Now, if you go with JSN or Amon-Ra, I would recommend trying to grab, if they're available, grab a running back in the second, with obviously your cutoff being Derrick Henry, as we discussed before in my rankings. Then a wide receiver in the third. That range is guys like Devontae Smith or Zay Flowers, and then same advice in terms of taking a running back in the fourth. And of course, if you want to, you can adjust one of those receivers for a tier 1 tight end. This is an interesting place where if you want to go with running back in the first with JT or CMC, technically speaking, you would have a Brock Bowers potentially available to you there. So that perhaps can give you an edge if you want to get a little spicy and go running back, tight end there with Brock Bowers, then you come around with a wide receiver, and then you go around with a running back. So there is creativity. There are interesting builds that can happen. You do have to be flexible, and you will be at the mercy of the draft, but there are different directions that you can go to still make this the ideal pick for you. Now, what happens if something goes wrong and you have to dip into round 5, or you play in 3 wide receiver, multiple flex leagues, and you need to dip in round 5 because your lineup does dictate more potential success with going more of a hero RB approach. Let's talk through the guys that fall after my safe range that ends with DeAndre Swift. We talked about my terror of Cam Skattebo. Unless the Giants vocally anoint him as a 3-down back, his ADP has to dip a little bit more for me to feel comfortable drafting him. It has to. I can't do it at the current price. Now, going on to other players, Bucky Irving is the lead back on his team. He managed to stay healthy throughout training camp. That's a great sign, but I've talked in my previous videos about the concern for his ceiling. Kenneth Gainwell will cut into his receiving work. Sean Tucker was sniping him at the goal line last year. Now, there are rumors floating around that Tucker is a cut candidate. I don't know if I buy that, but because there are other backs on roster, right? And that's the reason they're speculating, because his contract is not ideal, so maybe they want to save a little money. But regardless, it is very important to be wary of Bucky's lack of goal line usage last year. Bucky Irving had 16 red zone carries last season, and that was not because of the injury. Even players like Emmanuel Wilson had more red zone carries than him. Bam Knight had more red zone carries, and Bucky had 0 carries inside the 5. That is terrifying. It's not the same thing as Devon Achane, because Achane is a candidate for 100 receptions, right? So not the same upside. That reality is very at risk for Bucky. So you don't have the same receiving upside. You have the lack of goal line opportunities. It's just a recipe for a lot of disaster. Now, things can change, but the lack of red zone usage does make him a risky target for me. Then there are other backs in planned committees. The Texans reportedly could split carries between David Montgomery and Woody Marks. I have assumed that was going to be the case all along. Travion Henderson, Ramondre Stevenson, known split. Jadarian Price, still a question mark in terms of workload, but we know that Seattle prefers to use multiple backs. Pittsburgh has a committee, and then there's ADP riser Jonathan Brooks, who is splitting work in a committee with Chuba Hubbard. But of this grouping, if you need to target one, it is Travion Henderson for me, if you pick from this group. Because we all know the upside that he has is the highest of all the guys in this group. We've seen it. When Henderson is allowed to be the 3-down back, the upside is tremendous, and he can force Stevenson into the background. Now, he doesn't have the injury risk of a guy like Jonathan Brooks, so it makes him the most ideal to target within the risky range, because at the very least, you're going for a super high upside pick rather than just trying to play it a little bit safe in a risky zone. My second choice for who to target in this range would be Jonathan Brooks, because he has the potential to force this out of a committee, but the ADP, it is a little hefty, guys, for the massive injury risk. I would advise, if you were drafting from this range, I would also take an additional running back that can realistically get you fantasy points in week 1 as well, in case something goes sideways. So you just need to be a little bit deeper with your RB3 and not push it back too far. But you know who is in this range that does have guaranteed early down work and guaranteed goal line touches and some check down work? It is Quinshon Judkins. Now, some of my co-hosts on other shows are very anti-Judkins, and I get it, I do. Lack of high upside receiving work makes him a Javonte Williams in a bad offense. That's not the most ideal combination. But I think the fear is a little bit overblown, because the worst case scenario is literally what we just saw last year. Judkins was RB23 in average fantasy points per game in half PPR. I don't see how you can frame it as getting worse than that. That seems like the most realistic baseline outcome of what you would get, because the quarterback play is kind of just a repeat of last year. If things don't work out with Deshaun Watson, you get Shedeur Sanders. Okay, well, that's what we saw last season, so it's the same situation. Now, you could argue that defensively they took a hit with Myles Garrett being gone, for sure, right? But at worst, they're still an average at worst defense, and it's still possible for them to be a top 10 defense. Judkins gets knocked because it's fear that he will be in a committee with Dylan Sampson, but Sampson existed last season. Sampson was there, and Sampson got work, a lot of work, plenty of work on passing down. So again, the worst that can happen here is a repeat of last year. Judkins is a guaranteed lead back with no threat of goal line touches being sniped from him. He's not a super high upside pick because of the offensive situation, but with a full season, he is guaranteed to be at minimum a low-end RB2. And then there's Tuten. I'm pro Tuten. I won't lie to you though, he is a risk. The Jags are not trustworthy when it comes to how they use their backs and basing it off of preseason usage. Last season, we got all kinds of smoke screens with Tank Bigsby and Tuten just for it to end up being Travis Etienne's backfield. I believe that Tuten will be the lead back. I don't believe that he will 100% cede all of the goal line work to Chris Rodriguez and the passing downs work to Quint Allen Jr. This is what I believe, but I can't guarantee that my beliefs is how it will play out based on how the Jags operate in terms of their smoke screens. But theoretically, the only back who can be a third or three down back on this roster for the Jags is Tuten. Rodriguez can't do passing downs. Tuten already showed a full season of working ahead of LaQuint Allen Jr. on the ground, so there's no logical reason why that would change this season. Mathematically, it's either a committee where everyone's doing a little bit of something, or, best case scenario, Tuten is just a three-down back. Now, there is one name that has been suspiciously left out of this entire discussion. I'm sure you know who it is. Josh Jacobs. Now, reports are saying that there is surveillance video of what happened. So I would treat this as an Alvin Kamara type of situation because with Alvin Kamara's suspension of battery, there was video evidence of the situation. So I would 100% assume that a suspension is coming. It's tough to argue around that one, but the question is when. The question is when. Now, it doesn't particularly help us right now, but technically speaking, the charges coming does make things a little bit more clear because it depends on what the NFL wants to do, if they want to preemptively suspend him before the legal situation plays out, or if they want to wait for it to play out. But my most trusted source for fantasy football legal analysis is Drew Davenport FF on Twitter, and he gave a really good breakdown of everything that you need to know in detail. I highly recommend that you look at it and make your own assessment. Now that there are formal charges, that means that there is a court date. We have an actual date. Off the top of my head, I didn't write it down. Oops, I believe it's November. But there is an actual date, right? That would most likely, according to Drew, get pushed out to the offseason. Now, things can always change, but the most likely scenario is that the NFL allows the legal process to play out, which will inevitably push into the offseason. Josh Jacobs' ADP is dropping as we speak, so you will have to make the choice of are you just doing a full fade or are you taking the risk and buying the dip? It's the same situation, except we're probably getting a significant ADP drop again. He can still get suspended for this year. That is not outside the realm of possibility that could happen. And it's possible that video leaks and looks bad. We still don't know exactly specifically what is on the video, but it's possible it leaks bad, like visually the NFL has to take a stance and remove him, right? Like it's possible that happens. But based on recent processes, more than likely, suspension would be coming in 2027, but look at the information and make your own choice. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. You can find me across all social media platforms at It's Terra Time, so make sure that you're locked in, tune in, subscribe, turn on notifications and all that good stuff. And also make sure to take advantage of that 25% off at Rotowire with code TERRA, T-E-R-A, and use the link below in the description. Thank you for watching this video. We'll talk to you